Hello and happy Labor Day weekend. Um, this is my monthly just overview of the books that I've read and I guess preview of the books that I'm going to read. But I want, and then other things that I've written about over the course of the month. I want to start, for the first time, I guess, with an update on something that I mentioned the previous week, which is that I would like one day to own, to find at a library sale for a reasonable number of dollars the DVD of the original Disney Aladdin, and a couple days after I said that, it it appeared. Just it was right there in the children's section of the DVD, in the children's DVD section of the library sale, which means it was $1. And although sometimes depending on who catches you out, even if you find a DVD like this with the adult DVDs, which means it should be $3, they'll say no, it's a children's movie. It's $1. I also found the Disney Alice in Wonderland animated movie, and I got season 1 of House uh, in that same sale. But this was and it was perfect timing too, because not that I was in any hurry to order it from Amazon, but this on Amazon price had jumped to $64 for this DVD, and I got it, watched it as soon as I got back, and it worked perfectly. So very happy about this. Um, I suppose if I were going to try to will a DVD to appear to me at the library sale uh, next Saturday, it would be Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, which I would like because Star Wars Episode 9 is coming out, and I want to, for the first time ever, watch every movie in a series, a long series, in a single day leading up to the release of Episode 9. So Star Wars Episodes 1 through 8, not Solo or Rogue One or any of the tangential stuff, no disrespect to it, but I'm purely in it for the episodes. Episode 9 will be the last Star Wars DVD that I will ever buy new. So, so I'm just hoping at this point that I find at a library sale Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones for a reasonable amount. But DVDs weren't all that I got at that sale, and before I go into the books that I read this past month, I'm going to show you some alternate versions of books that I read over the course of the last 5 years. And that is, of course, the Animorphs books. Now, in 2011, they re-released 7, supposedly 8, but I don't think they ever put 8 out. The first 7 Animorphs books, supposedly they updated them so that there would be updated cultural references in the text, but the coolest bit was the lenticular covers. And I bought the first one just to have it at the time I was recollecting the Animorphs books, and so I thought I'll have a token lenticular cover updated version, and so I bought the first one, and but I thought, well, if I find them at a library sale, I didn't think this recently. I just thought if I find them at a library sale for cheap, I will maybe get them just for the collection and for the cool covers. And wouldn't you know it, the same sale where I find Aladdin, I find all 6 of the one. They didn't have the first one. They didn't have the invasion. They just had the 6 that I did not already possess. And I think it was for a total of $2 or $3. Yeah, I think it was a total of $3, and then $1 each for the Disney animated movies, and $6 for season 1 of House. It was $11 for all of those things, at least 7 of which were things that I specifically wanted, and the $11 for all that is a very good price. I do wish that they had released number 8, because number 8, if you will recall from previous videos, is the Animorphs book where we first get a look at an official image of an Andalite. And so, not that there's much that they could have done differently with Andalites in the new edition, but it would have been cool to see a redesign potentially of an Andalite, just a new image, a new official image of an Andalite. They didn't do that. Maybe the lenticular image exists somewhere, but I'm not going to find it at a library sale. Or maybe I will. You never know. Um, so that's the library sale DVD news, and as always and as last time, I highly advocate, strongly suggest, get DVDs and books at library sales. They're cheaper. There are a lot of them. I mentioned I'm trying to cut down on buying new DVDs. The last Star Wars DVD I buy will be Episode 9, and I'm hoping that I can kick the Harry Potter habit after Fantastic Beasts series ends after 5 movies. And if I've got a gift card or something and it's $10 at Target or something, then I could see myself getting like probably this year I might, if it's $10, I might get the Santa Claus, the Tim Allen movie, be my Christmas DVD movie edition. Although I have this year added a couple of Christmas DVDs to my collection for a grand total of $4. Um, what's the one? The little girl at the plaza, Eloise at the plaza, but Eloise at Christmas, which my cousin really liked, and The Shop Around the Corner, which is another Jimmy Stewart Christmas movie. It's based on a Romanian or Ukrainian play, The Shop Around the Corner, which is also the basis for the musical She Loves Me, and also the basis for the movie You've Got Mail, which I already have, which I got for, I think, $4 at Target. So new DVD, but old DVD prices. Anyway, shop at library sales. It also supports the libraries. Getting to books of the month. I mentioned Star Wars Episode 2, so I will start with this one. Yes, John Green's latest, which I found for $2 at the library sale, and now it's either going to make me $2 from a used bookstore or go back to the library sale and they can make another $2 on it themselves. It is called Turtles All the Way Down, which is a reference to the theory of the Earth being on the back of a giant turtle. And, well then, where's the giant turtle? If the Earth is on the giant turtle, is the giant turtle just in space or whatever? No, the giant turtle is on the back of another giant turtle. And where's that giant turtle? It's on the back. You see where I'm going. And in this book, a character specifically says that Star Wars Attack of the Clones has an unfairly bad reputation. And I would like to find the DVD and watch it to make that determination for myself at this point in my life. Last time I saw it, I was in between the excitement of being a kid seeing an exciting kids movie and an adult who is discerning. But it's also, more importantly, the book is about depression and mental illness and anxiety and how it manifests itself and how it damages people, which is not always apparent from the outside. Specifically, it's about how it's the way the mind works for the character, at least, and for a lot of people, is you get one potentially problematic thought, and then you follow that thought down a rabbit hole. And I'm going to be doing every so often it's going to fade to black because I didn't set it to not go to screensaver or fall asleep, so I will be doing you see my hand waving around or my arm waving around, that's that. But so the book is about how it can make you obsessed and make you hopeless because it automatically builds on the negative stuff. Don't know if it goes the opposite way. That wasn't really covered in the book, but it's a book for teenagers, so it didn't really have to be all-encompassing. But I recommend it. There was the whole thing a couple years ago when The Fault in Our Stars, the other John Green book, was the biggest book ever, and people were debating whether or not adults should have any appreciation for, see any value in books written for kids. I think that it depends on the book and it depends on the person, but if I fall to one side or the other, I'd say yes, the adults are fine reading and appreciating books written for kids, just like kids should occasionally and selectively read books written for adults, because that's how you grow as a reader. So this was very good. I think it's probably my favorite John Green. I've read all of them except for the one, Will Grayson, which he wrote with somebody else, in large part because I've never found it for under $1. I will eventually. So yes, that was a good segue, and it's a good book if you're. It didn't take long to read, because that's another thing about books written for kids, is that they don't take long for adults to read. So it's unlike the next book that I'll bring up here, which is taking forever. And but as of this month, actually as of yesterday, I've started reading more than 10 pages a day. See, I was chipping away at it. For those of you who haven't watched my previous videos, I was chipping away at it, but now I'm this far through. You can kind of see the bookmark on this side. I'm this far through. This year, I made a somewhat useless resolution that I've actually been able to keep, to not look ahead and see how many pages are in the books that I'm reading. So I don't know exactly how many pages are in this book. I think there's about 900, and I'm at about 700, which means I should be able to finish it in the next couple of days, and I really hope I do, because it's not Les Mis, and it's not Moby Dick, and it's not other giant books that I have enjoyed. I even found something to enjoy in Atlas Shrugged. I was about to say Atlas Obscura. There's tons to enjoy on Atlas Obscura, but Atlas Shrugged, there's less to enjoy, but I found ways to enjoy it, and it's 1,000 pages. And so I'm looking forward to finishing this book, and hopefully, like the John Green book, I can get a good price for it. And I'll listen to the Man of La Mancha cast recording that I have with Brian Stokes Mitchell, which I will enjoy significantly more. I think this is kind of a situation kind of like with Phantom, where, but not Les Mis, but with Phantom, I think that the musical is the best version of the story, even though it's not the original version. I think that might be the same here. But, I haven't finished it. Maybe I'll love it. But I don't think so. So I have been reading that book. It's long, and it's very dry, and probably it's brilliant for its time, but I'm not sure it's brilliant for me. So I'll hold this book up again. I held this book up last time, not just because I was planning to read it in the month ahead, but also because Harold Prince died the day that I recorded my last video. And this book was written 30 years ago. It ends pretty much with Phantom of the Opera, and which he directed, and which is the only, I believe, the only production of his that you can still see his version of. Other musicals, they've been influenced by him, but the Phantom of the Opera, the production running on Broadway and in London, they're like living monuments to Harold Prince. And also, this month at the Lincoln Center Library, there will be, I think it opens September 17th, somewhere around there, an exhibit about him, which will have many cool artifacts. I'm going to write about it for Onstage blog. And but this was interesting, and there were just a few things that I'd like to, specific things that I'd like to point to. I'll try to remember the other while I do the one. He directed a musical called, the original Broadway production of a musical called Pacific Overtures, which is about the American Commodore Perry and how he opened up Japan to Western traders and just the Western world, and made it accessible, and made them acknowledge the rest of the world. Japan was very closed off, and they didn't necessarily want visitors, but that's what it's about. I was in the musical in college, and I played a character called Kayama Yazaemon. Now, even though my last name is Netsuki, which spelled differently is a Japanese word that means some kind of small token that you would use to fasten kind of a belt or a ribbon or a rope or something around your waist or around anything else. But I'm not Japanese. And what happened was the director really wanted to put on the musical, and so she put on the musical with what she had as far as theater and musical theater people, and were mostly white. And if she did that today, that was, I think, before Twitter. If she did that today, we probably would have been shut down. And I don't feel any shame from it because, and I don't think any of my fellow cast members, and not necessarily her, but definitely not my fellow cast members or anyone else involved, because we did it under her guidance. She was supposed to be the one teaching us, and but again, I don't necessarily judge her for it either. She really wanted to do it, and at the time, there was no Twitter, and there was less consideration about representation. But when the original Broadway production, directed by Harold Prince, happened, he's specifically quoted in here as saying, "We wanted to cast Asian actors for authenticity," which means there was some consideration of not casting Asian actors. And actually, he says that the theater got bomb threats from white actors who hadn't been cast, who believed very, very strongly, apparently, that they deserved to play Kayame Zaimon and Manjiro and the Shogun and all of the Japanese people. So that was a very interesting passage. There was some doubt in Harold Prince's mind that casting Asian actors in Pacific Overtures was the right way to go, and so there's some precedent for what happened in Geneseo. What was the other thing? Well, I'm going to link to where I wrote about this down below, and I will talk more about Harold Prince probably next month because I will have been to the exhibit and written about it, so maybe I'll remember by then. But the link to this, which I think is called probably Prince of Broadway, the Once and Future Prince, that will have the other anecdote that I found particularly amusing. Oh, it wasn't an anecdote, it was just that the author, this author here, Foster Hirsch, cited a very famous Andrew Lloyd Webber song from the musical Cats called Memory, except he wrote Memories, which is a common mistake. People refer to the song as Memories, but it's not called Memories, and the plural of the word memory is called memory, singular, and the plural of the word memory doesn't appear in the lyrics anywhere. So it's a common but very strange mistake. But it's in a book that this person was paid to write, and which got him access to Stephen Sondheim and Andrew Lloyd Webber and Hal Prince to interview. And I've written musical theater books that don't make that mistake, and I can't get them published. So, but you know, this is I'm going to put this back out into the world, and one day there will be an all-encompassing Hal Prince biography, and I look forward to reading that. But this was a good primer. Except the guy seemed at sometimes he was using it as a backdoor way to write a history of musical theater and a biography of Stephen Sondheim. But it was good. A separate piece. Is this one of only 2 novels that I read this month? This and the John Green. Maybe the rest were nonfiction. I don't know. But I first read this in 10th grade, and it's a very nice cover. Let me see if I can get a better shot of the cover. I first read it in 10th grade, and then I've been rereading books that I read in 10th grade. I read Flowers for Algernon earlier this year, but it came back into my wanting to read it when I thought I started writing a fan fiction. I occasionally dabble. And it's about when Albus Dumbledore met Gellert Grindelwald, and that's the relationship in the Harry Potter movies that is currently being explored in Fantastic Beasts, kind of. I started writing a fan fiction based on, I had reread all the Harry Potters. I reread all of them, taking notes on Dumbledore, because Daniel Radcliffe had said in an interview that you can't make a musical based on Harry Potter, and he has since been proven wrong a couple of times, just not by me, but I wanted to prove him wrong. And so my concept, and I still might do this one day, was a one-man musical for Dumbledore, and I'm getting to the relevance of this book, which was a very good book. Concept was a one-man musical for Dumbledore. It takes place in his portrait that headmasters get when they die in the headmaster's office of Hogwarts. And it would be a tour coming to learn about the school, because they potentially want to send their wizard students there. And so Dumbledore recounts the history of the school. And so I was taking notes on the history of the school and on Dumbledore, because his life is a significant portion of the history of the school. And I ended up writing a very, very long and I think, all-encompassing academic-type paper about Dumbledore, which can be found in bits and pieces on my blog. I'm not sure if I'll link to it down there, but eventually, sometime this year or next year, I'm going to put it all on Medium, not in 5 chapters, but all together. And I started writing a fan fiction about him and Grindelwald. And this, what I remembered of it, was going to be part of my foundation for the relationship of the two boys in here, was going to be part of my foundation for the relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and that project has been put to the side in favor of original things that I don't have to get permission to publish, although I keep being encouraged by certain people to continue with it. But I still got it, and I was curious to reread it, and it does have I mean, it's not, the characters aren't explicitly gay, although there are people who suspect that Jean and Phineas are supposed to be gay, or at least one of them is, in this book. More likely, the more extroverted and flamboyant and just acting out Phineas. You repress something about yourself and you act out in other ways, and he certainly acts out a lot. But there is somewhat of a parallel for Dumbledore being Jean, lonelier, more introverted, more bookish, and being so Dumbledore as Jean, and then Phineas as smart, brilliant, athletic, powerful in his way, but more reckless, and like Grindelwald. So that's the lens through which I read this book. You don't have to have that lens to read and appreciate this book. It's beautifully written. And if you find this copy, either at the bookstore where I'm going to sell it, which I'm not sure if I should name or not, on the internet, not that it's going to make any difference, or at the library sale that I might give it to if the guy at the bookstore doesn't want to buy it. You can have this copy, which is very pretty. I'm sure there are other copies with this same cover, but it's just a beautiful cover. So that's, and then I read a couple of plays. I'm not going to talk about most of them, but this one I am going to talk about. This is an unofficial, I think, and unsanctioned look at the Peanuts gang as teenagers. And it's a play. And I don't know if I've seen it or not. I've definitely seen parts of it. I am not sure in what context or if I actually saw the whole thing. It's very interesting. The characters are semi-disguised behind names that aren't exactly Charlie Brown, Linus, Lucy, but it's very good. A friend of mine was the assistant stage manager on one of the original productions, off-Broadway productions, and it's really interesting. It looks at, it takes them somewhat logically to where they would be as teenagers, how Charlie Brown would still be unhappy and not sure why he's unhappy, and trying to be a good person, but not sure how to be a good person. Linus is very philosophical, and he is also, as many philosophical teenagers, he's into the pot. Lucy becomes a pyromaniac. And oh, there's a cat up in the window across the way. Very nice looking cat. Who else? Sally is somewhat not multiple personalities, but she's still not sure how she wants to express herself. So it's interesting for that reason. And I really liked most of the discussions in it, discussions about life and afterlife. I didn't really like how it ended. Maybe how it ended had the emotional impact on me that it was supposed to, but I think it could have been, there was a different way to end it that was better. It just went in a direction that I didn't really like. I hope to see it one day. I think I'm past the point where I might be in it, but I hope to see it. And this kind of transitions to my coming attractions, what books I'm going to read next, because this is 3 novellas by Larry LaBelle, who's a friend of my dad's from high school. And I'm also going to read The Abundance League after I finish Don Quixote, which is his short stories. This is 3 novellas. And he has a novel. Let me find the title of the novel. Tough Girl in the Jam. It was released in July, and you can get it on Amazon. I'll have that link down there. Um, and I've been meaning to read these books because I've been in email contact with him, and he's given me some advice on writing stories, novellas, scripts, plays, and I'm hoping to get some more advice. Um, and they were really good. Um, the first one is the one that I'll highlight. It's called Somebody to Love, and it and part of the reason I really liked it is because it takes place in Woodstock. It has to do with the history of Woodstock, the artistic history, the music festival, and the political history, and it's very interesting. And then the other two, one of them which is called Seven Steps Ahead, and the other one is called The Joke, I think, A Joke. Also very interesting. And so the way that this transitions into what I'm going to read in September is I didn't know what I was going to read in September. I had the books that you've seen and more set up for August, and I have since my computer is sitting where they would normally be, my Halloween books are over there, my October books, my November books are over here, and I don't really know what I'm going to do in December either necessarily, except for this Louisa May Alcott Christmas book, and possibly A Christmas Carol, which is in my Christmas treasury. But other than that, I have no set plans for December, and I had no set plans for December. I had no set plans for December, and I had no set plans for September, and now I kind of do. I read the Larry LaBelle novellas, and I'm going to read, it's currently holding up my computer for balance, the Abundance League. Short stories, that'll be right after Don Quixote, and then I figured I would read Merle Seacrest's biography of Stephen Sondheim, which is, I think, 10 years younger than the Hal Prince biography, so not complete, but that's another reason why I thought, well, I may as well read it while there's no full Sondheim biography. I kind of want to get rid of it. It's a somewhat big book, but I'm curious. And then last year around this time was when Andrew Lloyd Webber's memoir, Unmasked, came out. That's currently up on my shelf, and I read that, so it's appropriate if around this time this year I read a Stephen Sondheim biography. And I might, in December, if there's time, I might finally read Ron Chernow's biography of Alexander Hamilton, which I've had, I think, for a little bit longer than I've known that the musical was coming when Lin-Manuel Miranda did the opening number in 2009 at the White House. I think I got the book before that because I remember the author being interviewed on The Daily Show about it, and just saying like this underappreciated founding father was worthy of a 800 or 900 page book. So depending on time, I may read that, and then I'm not going to keep it. But I brought it to New York under the mistaken impression that I might one day be in the musical. I didn't realize what the aesthetic of the musical was going to be, what the concept was going to be. I might still be in it, but not as Alexander Hamilton or Aaron Burr, even though my name is also Aaron. I might conceivably play King George, and that would be fun. I don't know when, probably never, but it's still a goal. So there's that, and I've been keeping it thinking, well, I'll read it right before I see Hamilton, but you can't plan to see Hamilton unless you have a lot of money. You can't know when you're going to see it. Hi, Cat. So eventually I'll see Hamilton, but I'm not going to wait to see Hamilton to read the book. Maybe I thought I'd see it before I read the book. I'm just going to read the book, potentially. If not in December, then sometime next year. I've got a lot of large books that need to be read. And here's the thing about not knowing, necessarily not having anything planned for September, is I've got next January, February, and March planned. And I guess I have, if there's time after the Sondheim biography, then I might read the Michael Crichton novel Congo, or I might read the Book of Success, which I think is just a bunch of quotes about being successful, but I could use the inspiration, and then I will get rid of that book as well. So let's see, moving on to things that I wrote about that were not books, which were a couple. I wrote about how I think that we should be spoiling movies for ourselves, not for other people, but for ourselves, because spoilers have become a gimmick to goose sales. and I don't think we should be rewarding movies for manipulating us into the movie theaters, spend money for to make sure that we see the action play out before we hear how the action plays out. And I don't know that spoilers are a particular problem. For a long time, I didn't really care about them. And then I started to feel, a couple of years ago, I started to feel ill at the idea of a movie being spoiled for me, and it was a strange feeling, and I didn't like it. But I think that's what a lot of people feel, and so I started watching spoiler reviews on YouTube if I was particularly curious, and not caring if I know the twists in Solo or the twists in Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. There are a few movies. The movies, if I'm going to buy a movie on DVD, I still care about seeing it before I hear about spoilers. But I'm trying to train myself to not care about spoilers at all. And I wrote a thing for Onstage Blog, the on-screen section of Onstage Blog, advocating for people not caring about spoilers. Um, and so, yeah, just we need to reward movies for being good and high quality, and not for their only reason for us to see them in the movie theaters is so that we see them in the movie theaters before we hear about them, before we have the plot, before the plot becomes part of the public consciousness. Um, because you never hear about spoiler problems with movies that are otherwise very high quality. A lot of the movies where you care about spoilers, they're less quality. Because they don't have to be great to get people into, and I think that things should have to be great to be rewarded. Um, well, not necessarily in all cases, but movies. I think that the movie industry is manipulating us. Speaking of spoilers, by the end of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first three movies of the trilogy, if you haven't seen them, this is the closest thing you're going to get to a warning. Keira Knightley's character, Elizabeth Swann, is the Pirate King. And so what I wrote, I had this idea. I can't, of course, do it myself, so I put it out into the internet in hopes that it might gain traction. I don't know how Keira Knightley herself would feel about it, probably indifferent. But my idea was that they should reboot the Pirates of the Caribbean, which they're not going to do with Johnny Depp anymore, and there was a plan to reboot it without him, but there didn't seem to be any plan beyond him not being involved. But they reboot it, and Elizabeth Swann, the Pirate King, is the central character. And they could even, the title of the reboot is built in: Pirates of the Caribbean, The Pirate King, or Return of the Pirate King, or just Return of the King. That is a successful title, and it has been a successful title in the past, a successful subtitle. And I just thought it makes sense to do. I'd love to see it. We are in the age of female-led action movies, and she does some great action in those movies already. She could do more great action, but she doesn't have a ship. She ends the series, she ends that trilogy marooned on an island, pregnant with the child of Will Turner, who's now the captain of the Flying Dutchman, and can't set foot on land but once every 10 years. And that's not a very satisfying ending. It wouldn't be a satisfying ending if she weren't the Pirate King, but she is. And so you can have a movie about her deciding, I'm the Pirate King. I want to be a pirate. She's always loved piracy stories, even before she got on a pirate ship. And she fit in perfectly. She loved it. Why would she stop wanting that for her life? And so got a whole new franchise going. Her in the center. And maybe Orlando Bloom is there too. Zoe Saldana was in the first Pirates movie. She could be a first mate type character or a rival pirate. Get Sigourney Weaver to play a Davy Jones or whoever Javier Bardem played in the fifth Pirates movie, or whoever somebody played in the fourth Pirates movie, which is the only one I haven't seen. I plan to get these movies on DVD if I find them at the library as well, just fourth and fifth, because I don't have them. I have the first three, and I look forward to importing them to New York and watching them again. Yeah, so have Sigourney Weaver play the sort of role that they would play, the fantastical monster creature. Yeah, there are all sorts of, that link will be below. And I wrote about, let me make sure that I covering all these, but I wrote a couple of sets of parody lyrics, which I won't sing here, but I wrote updated versions of Don McLean's Prime Time, and both of these, if you click on the links, they have a video that you can play the video and then sing along my lyrics with the music of the video, which has the lyrics, the original lyrics, so you'll have to sing loudly to hear yourself. But Don McLean's Prime Time, and then science fiction double feature from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Rocky Horror Picture Show, depending on if you're seeing it on stage or not. So you can look into those. And okay, so two more things to talk about. And just very quickly, I wrote a thing praising the original animated Disney Mulan, in part because I'm excited to see the live action. It's the only live action Disney remake that I am genuinely excited to see and interested in. I'm curious about, for instance, Aladdin, because of the Will Smith angle, and also I like the original, so I'm curious. But for the most part, these movies are not for me, and I'm not that interested in them. But there's the Mulan left me more curious about its subject matter than any other Disney movie has, because Mulan was a not necessarily historical, but a legendary figure in China, and her story of disguising herself as a boy and joining the army to protect her father is that legend. And there's way more to it than is in the Disney movie. And it even has, I think, more of a love story than the Disney movie has, but the lack of the love story in the Disney movie, and it is there, but it's barely there, that's one of the things I like about it. It's the only one, I think, of the Disney Renaissance movies, with the possible exception of The Rescuers Down Under, and I guess there's something of a love story, but it's the driving purpose of most of these movies is the love story. And in Mulan, the driving purpose is she's protecting her father, she's trying to fight for China, and I just think that's more interesting than I've got to use the lamp to become a prince to win the princess, or I've got to win the heart of the woman in order to break the curse that made me a beast, or I've got to make a bargain with the octopus to give her my voice so she will give me legs so I can go up on land and win the heart of the prince. It's just more interesting to me than all of that. Strangely, it has a less interesting villain than any of those movies, but that's okay. So that link will be there. And then finally, I went to Boston a couple of weekends ago, and it was for my cousin's wedding, and the wedding was very nice, and I highly recommend going to your cousin's weddings. But while I was in Boston, I did what I often do when I go to other cities, and I looked up Atlas Obscura places, and I Atlas Obscured the city. And what was particularly unique about this experience, other than the fact that I was there for some reason other than exploring, is that I had 40 places on my list, and I had 4 hours to see them all. Or it took 4 hours. I actually had 2.5 hours technically, but I ended up taking 4 hours with a different cousin. But usually I have at least twice that amount of time to see half that many places. My explorations centered around Boston Common, which is their version of Central Park. It's a huge, beautiful park with the Make Way for Ducklings sculpture and the Edgar Allan Poe Square at the site where he was born is not technically in the park. It is across from the park, which I figured out after those 4 hours were already up. Other interesting things to see, there are a couple of bookshops, including the Brattle Bookshop, which is half inside bookshop and half outside bookshop. Very interesting. I went up to Little Italy with my cousin, who loves Italian culture, possibly more than I do, and probably more than I do. Well, let's just say she does like Italian culture more than I do. And she showed me some things up there, some little hidden parks, some of which had Italian flags painted in various ways on walls. And I went to I think 5 cemeteries, only 3 of which I think were Atlas Obscura places, and I visited the tombs of people like Paul Revere, whose house I went to the house. I didn't go in because it would have cost money. But there's Paul Revere Mall, which is a nice long pathway. Um, I saw the grasshopper on top of the Faneuil Hall, and I bought a little pewter grasshopper pin. That's the only souvenir that I bought. There's a nice hat shop where they also fix hats. I didn't get a hat, but I'm in the market for a new hat. You can see my hat back there, but you can't see how beat up it is after, I'm going to say, 13 years. So I'm going to keep that hat for roughing it, hiking, outdoor things, but I'm looking for a new hat kind of like that. I'm thinking hemp at this point, and I also need a new bear pin to go with it. Um, but yeah, my Aaron Atlas Obscures Boston will be linked below, and you can see how I saw 40 Atlas Obscura places, plus so much more: the site of the Boston Massacre, the grave of Samuel Adams, um, some nice churches, but also some nice buildings that were under construction, and so I couldn't see them. So yes, go to Boston, go exploring. One thing that I've written about in past Atlas Obscura things is that I don't always really care about the sites that I go to see. I like to make a list, and I like to have as many things on that list as possible so that I can click as many things that I've been there and expand my own personal Atlas Obscura map as I can. And if they're outside, and they're right there, why not see them? But I don't always care enough to, for instance, go into Paul Revere's house. The point for me of these excursions is that I go searching for them. So, for instance, up in Rhinebeck, there's an old, decrepit mansion, and it's technically condemned. I think you're legally not supposed to trespass and go to it. People do. I don't see anything wrong with doing that as long as you stay safe, but it's not really my style. But I found it. I could see it from the street from far away, and which means I went searching for it, which means I was inspired by Atlas Obscura. I left, I went far away, I found a place. And that's more important to me than going inside, than seeing the recreated rooms of a historic place, or the falling in grand staircase of a historic place. Maybe one day I'll do that sort of thing too, but for me it's more that I find it, that I get right up to it. Which means I went exploring, which means I put effort. That's the effort. Once you're there, it's not as much effort to go inside. So I guess I'll leave you with that. It being Sunday morning, as per what I like to watch on Sunday mornings, I would like to leave you with a moment of nature with an animal, but I have no animals, and the cat is gone from the window. Even if I turned the camera around, it probably wouldn't pick up the cat. But what I can do is this. So have a great Labor Day weekend, and even though I'm not necessarily ending the videos with this anymore, I think it'd be appropriate right now to end with Ram the Blade Ship.